Shall we do it?
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay. So now we switched. So what you see here is actually not PowerPoint, right? What we're looking at is basically an example of a decision environment that we have created very quickly using these two pathways, which I'm going to show the back end in just a second. So how the system works is that you can basically generate dashboards and you put information, inputs, outputs, pathways onto those dashboards. The interesting part is that the dashboards don't have to be connected or on the same computer. So I'm using actually a tablet PC to change slides. I could also put more information on this for a specific user group. I can interact with all the pieces on the screens. And you can see here we actually use two different machines to drive one coherent decision environment. So you can start building as many monitors or as many components as you want. So in this particular example, we've loaded a shapefile with homicide rate data, right, across counties in the US. You can basically select which homicide rate, which year you want to take. You can select a significance level, and then you have these two representations of the outcome of the local Moran heights. Rook and Queen contiguity, and then what we do is we take that information and compile it, and basically you would have a red area where both Rook and Queen are significant. You have a green area where only Rook is significant, a blue area where only Queen is significant, right? So you're combining all these kind of things. So, and obviously you can also change this, and we can calculate this on the fly. Let's see if that works. So you get these red boxes to know that we're actually waiting for data. So we're dispatching the job, right? It goes, it runs, and we see how fast it runs, if it runs at all. Okay, as always, it's slower than one. Ah, there we go. Okay. So it's slower than expected, right? So, but you can arbitrarily define these things and combine them together to do all kinds of calculations. And basically, the question I would pose to the community is, one, is it a good idea to separate all these things out in the fashion we're doing? You know, GI signs, and then there are other domains that do other things, and yeah, they work together, rather than kind of mixing it all up and actually just using the components and the pieces and the bits that are relevant to my particular work, right? And two, we saw these nice backend interfaces, which I'm also a big fan of because I love scripting and everything goes very efficient, right? But lots of people that I work with, they're actually not experts in scripting, and then how do you deal with those? And I would say, when we saw the list yesterday with all the user groups that we're looking at, yeah, the first one is probably the people here in the room, right? The second one is a little bit larger, this is GIS experts, but the two lower ones are the ones where it gets really interesting, and those people don't probably understand GIS, nor do they understand programming, right? Wanted to make that point. So, let me jump one step further here so we can see how this looks in the back end. So I've thrown up a little picture here, a little diagram on the left. Basically, this is how the framework works, and it parallels CyberGIS beautifully. So it would match and integrate nicely. So there's somewhere is a data store and the data that you operate on. Then you have tools that you can call. This could be a simulation, it could be a simple addition of things. For us, we did basically the PySal, right? But it could be anything else, and that could be a whole simulation that runs on a cluster somewhere, right? CyberGIS toolkit. Then you have the workflow manager, but then I think the interesting part would be to take these bits and pieces out of different simulations or chains of simulations and put them together into dashboards that actually people can understand that are not GIS experts, right? And so I'm coming from an area where we're looking more at this high-level decision-making, right? So there's a whole bunch of analysts which understands the workflow, which understands how the data needs to flow, and then at the top end, there are people that can look at results and scenarios, but they don't know necessarily how this works. And my argument for why CyberGIS would be time. If I have, 5 super high-level people in the room, first of all, how to get them in the room. So this actually works also distributed, by the way. So you can have people in several different places looking at the same things, and it will automatically synchronize between the partners, right? But they may have 10 minutes to look at something like this, 20 at most, right? And if your model runs an hour, you're out of the game, right? So there's also a psychological barrier, and now it gets really hard for supercomputer people because that's about 7 seconds. That's when you get, so imagine people in a room discussing a problem, looking at scenarios, right? And after 7 seconds, they say, okay, let's discuss something else, and we'll come back to this whenever it's finished, right? The whole thought of discussion is actually interrupted. So now here you see the back end, and this is actually also, live, right? So I can combine different components. So what you see here is basically the blue are the inputs, right? We had the significance level and the row selection out of our shapefile. Green is the actual processing, and as you can see, we can key them together however you want. And then brown is visualization, and everything is modular, so you can pick and choose, right? So we have libraries of visualizations, and same idea as CyberGIS, or we don't want to redo these things, right? So we're using D3 and Google Charts and whatever is out there that can work. Same here, right? So PySal is an existing product which works just fine. Why reinvent it, right? And same with the other parts. So how do we? 40 seconds. Hey, we're so close. Okay. So basically, well, we have shown these two workflows, these two parallel change, right? We've used a variety of visualizations for the results, right? And with the CSF, basically the few points that I have listed here, I could make 20, 30 more, but so I think one would be collaborative. And I think this actually mirrors a lot of the things that were discussed yesterday evening when we had the long list of points.
Sorry.
Okay, I think I
didn't mean to do that. No, please finish.
Shall I finish this? Okay. So collaborative analysis and decision making. So basically, people across places should be able to work together on a problem using the CyberGIS backend, high performance backend, to look at their issues very dynamically, right? So I think then the integration of data, analysis, visualization, I say via workflows, but just because at the front end, the people that look at that, I think they don't understand these things, and you have to basically prepare it for them and enable them to use this, right? Also different types of users, right? So this domain stovepiping, if you will, I think is not really a good idea. So we have different types of projects that we have used this framework on. One was a big project that looked at solar deployments in Arizona, and there were engineers, there were GIS people, and there were business people, and they didn't want to talk to each other. And so in order to make everything integrate and run, what you do is basically you go to every single one and make sure that the data exchange works. So it's like, it's not that easy. And they get evaluated writing papers in journals that are very specific to their domain. So why would they be wanting to do something cross-domain? But I think cross-domain is where the interesting new discoveries probably would be made, right? And then, well, the last part is basically everything should be modular, reproducible, distributed ideally. Also, the whole mobile idea. So this particular piece of software works on everything that will do HTML5. So I can actually pull this up wherever, right? And dynamic, I can actually start changing things on the fly. So if you don't like the graph, you can go in right away and change the color and do things dynamically, and everybody sees the result and can start working together. Okay, so far.
Great, thank you.